We've known each other like since COVID, so is that like, or was it a bit before that?
Before COVID?
Five?
Yeah,
5
something
years?
like that.
Okay, we have these random chats of inspiration on the phone, but I had the privilege of coming to Malcolm's studio and being blown away, mostly by the relationship between jazz playing really loud and this incredible world of bespoke plates that were destined for incredible restaurants, like, and at this point it was for Bailey Lodges, but we've got a whole practice of doing plates for Attica, for Peter Gilmore. I mean, the list goes on. This kind of relationship or collaboration that Malcolm really loves, which is learning about a requirement for somewhere special and building a piece that ritualizes the experience, in this case of eating food, on something that is connected to nature, connected to you, who you are inside. And in learning for this talk, I just wanted to say that, what really blew me away was when I was 6 years old, Malcolm landed in Boston, right? Landed in Boston when I was 6, and basically studying business. You started that's what it says in your bio.
Well, after my apprenticeship,
yeah.
Studying business.
And do you want to share what happened to you when you were in Boston? Like something special happened that connects you to this show?
So the journey with ceramics started actually at university, where I had a semester with not too much work, and I took a class in ceramics. And then we moved to Boston, and I met my teacher, Makoto Yabe, and that was after I'd learned sort of the English sort of technique of making ceramics. I then learned the Japanese way, and it was like an epiphany. And I took a class with him. I was probably one of his first students, and learnt the basics all over again, and then worked sort of side by side on and off for about 3 years. But my time, I think hardly a day goes by that I don't think of Makoto's influence on my work and what I do. Yeah.
You said you had an epiphany. Can you share what that might have been about?
Well, being shown Japanese ceramics. I'd never seen it before, really, or never been aware of it, and it just clicked. This is the way, it sort of clicked with the way I like to work. Very, very quickly, making functional things, making things that people get to use. I don't know, it's just something about the simplicity of the aesthetic and everything that really appealed.
Yeah. Was he warm to you, or was there
he was so generous.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's another thing that that made that experience so important, and just realising how generous he was, and how generous a lot of teachers and masters are in sharing their skills and experience.
So
I learnt to make tempura.
Wow.
Drank a lot of sake together.
Wow. Wow. And did he have family?
He was he's married to his first wife at that stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And was this in his home or in a
studio? So we worked, in a sort of cooperative workshop studio.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So were there quite regimented in the practice, learning how to basically clean your tools, prepare
tools?
No. Okay. Okay.
We better not go there.
Okay.
I think Leanne might.
Don't go there. Okay. But what do you mean, don't go there? Like, what is that? I want to know what that means.
Have you seen his studio?
Yeah. Yeah. But was that how you guys?
Ordered.
Right. So if you don't know Malcolm's studio, it's, I don't know, it feels like two cats have had a wrestle in there. Like there's clay on the walls. There's
No, there's not.
incredibly, all these, because you come from engineering, he's built all these racking systems. He's got an incredible machine that comes down and helps you guide the plates that you've come up, like there's only like 2 in the country or something. Like,
Oh, no, not
So-
there's a few more than that.
but there's a lot of experimental knowledge from your love of engineering and your awareness of things like ball bearings and all that, which I get off on. But basically,
Sorry, Josh.
but you. But what I was trying to get to, because like some studios are so clean, and I'm just trying to get back to Boston. Was his studio?
It was a cooperative workshop.
Yeah.
And Makoto rented a space here, and I rented a space here.
Ah.
So I would hang around like a bad smell.
Yeah, right.
basically,
Right.
and help him with whatever I could help him with,
Yeah. Right.
and that's the way I learned.
Okay.
And I think that that was just that in looking back, it was the generosity that was, I think, and sort of the understanding the Japanese aesthetic a bit more, that was the sort of the real gift.
So I think there's something I haven't flushed out here, because culturally some of us feel Japanese tradition is very regimented and structured in tradition that's been going on for hundreds of years. Makoto, when he came to Boston, was he rebelling from those traditions? Was he more avant-garde, freestyle, like coming up with more freedoms in practice versus a long tradition?
I think he wanted to be. He didn't come from a ceramic family as such.
Okay.
So that his pathway in Japan would have been probably fairly limited. So it's very open if you, within a ceramics family, you've got everything almost handed to you on a platter, but he
Right.
didn't. And it was at a time when there was probably a number of Japanese artists leaving Japan because they wanted to be free of some of those traditions, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the people that I find inspiring is Jun Keniko, and he came to the United States a bit earlier,
Yes.
and his work is just sort of took off. It's amazing.
And Jun's work you saw in Tokyo when you were with your friend Richard?
Robert.
Architect.
Where are you, Robert?
Robert, architect. Okay.
So Robert and I were travelling, that's sort of the beginning of the heads too. So
Yeah.
Robert and I were travelling with a friend of ours who's a Japanese restaurateur, and Robert's looking at the dunnies and I'm turning the plates over.
Wow. What a combo.
Well, we went there to check out all these sake brewers.
Right.
We went, how many? We must have gone to half a dozen at least. There was a lot of sake.
Wow.
But we got to Tokyo and we're in this hotel. We walked into the foyer of this hotel and these 2 mammoth heads by Jun Keniko.
How big?
Oh, they were like this.
Wow.
And at the time, I think Robert was working. You correct me if I'm wrong, Robert. You were working on a commission for Cochlea, and Robert said, "Can you do this?" And I said, "No, I can't do that."
Whoa. Yeah.
But that was sort of the inspiration of doing heads, but obviously to get the sort of the size, or it would have to be like an installation. So it was
Yes.
doing number heads.
Yeah. So when
So then I had to try and figure out how I can do something like that, given how I like to work, mainly throwing,
Yes.
and how quickly I like to work. I had a light bulb moment and went to the workshop and did it, and that was sort of the beginning. Unfortunately, that commission didn't take off.
Yes.
But it started this whole process of the heads.
So you've told me that around through 40 years you've had this fascination with the head form, which comes from
the blossom vase.
from the blossom vase.
Yeah.
And then when you made these blossom vases, which I don't know if any of you can do that, but I'm just gobsmacked at the process which you've described as almost as you're pulling the vase up. At some point you have to use a pottery stick, like a pulling stick, to go inside the hole and complete.
Well, you throw the cylinder. You
Yeah.
don't use the stick to. This is the technical part of this. So
Yeah.
you don't use the throwing stick to actually throw the clay up. So you throw a cylinder, and then you have to form it into the shape. So I start with just my hand pushing it out, or a wooden a wooden rib,
Yeah.
pushing it out. And then when the neck gets too narrow and it's getting to the end of the forming process, you put a stick in that can it's actually, how would you describe it? The stick comes down and goes around like that. So you can sort of get it into a very narrow opening, and then you can do the final forming.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you saw these giant heads. You were inspired how to bring it into your own capacity, because obviously you didn't have the access to equipment to go on that kind of scale and assistance. And by forming the blossom,
Not in a single car garage.
right? Yeah, right. Okay. And then you had obviously the challenges. Or you were working in business, and then you were loving this on the side. And in the process, there was a tug of war between your love of clay and your career. And in this, while that's going on, there was some part of you that wanted to whack them, right? You wanted to whack these vases, which you keep talking to me with great enthusiasm. Yeah, your words are belt the shit. But you wanted to create a figurative element in a vase. You want to talk about how that might have come about?
Well, I've been working on the very spherical blossom vase shape for like 40 years. And then these heads that we saw were very round. So that was sort of the first heads were basically, they're based on a blossom vase, except that it's closed up completely. And the light bulb moment was, how can I do this sort of head idea, given what I like to do. I like to make these big round shapes, pushing out as much as I possibly can. And, I'm not into carving. It's much too much farting around, if you ask me. So, I've got to form the face quickly. And so I had this moment and I thought, I could just build it with a hammer, and there you go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
basically, there you go.
But behind that comment is so much more. Like, I feel like you're I just gave it a whack, and there's a spirit, there's an energy that we're associating with. We're feeling. You even spoke about in your statement. You said, I feel there is community amongst these forms of head forms, and I feel that we're in a time where community and the collaborative approach is so important. And when I see your heads in a group, I feel that energy of them starting to commune together. Do you want to talk about, in your statement, why that was really so important for you to emphasize, and obviously having them in your studio, and some were living even in your garden for a while, obviously getting more energy. Do you want to go into that space a bit?
So, well, firstly, there's a whole bunch of shitters in the back garden that didn't work. But, yeah, I mean, when I do hit it and form the face, it's literally just two whacks. But it probably has, there's been a lot of heads under the bridge. And, I know I've learnt from how I hit them what I like and what I don't like. And then I'll do a whole series, and I want to make them all a bit different, so they have a different expression. So actually some of them get a little bit more of a whack on to create a brow. But yeah, I intentionally think about the face and where I'm going to position the piece of wood that I whack. And then I think, so the thing with Cochlear didn't work, but as I kept making these things, the whole idea of community and listening and sharing things with all sorts of different people started to resonate. And I thought, this is what this series has to be about, is about trying to bring us all together, a very multicultural society, and learn from each other and talk to each other and listen.
Yeah. Well, I feel that being in here, and I feel that I feel the warmth in your glazes. I feel a lot of love. Maybe I'm being too empathetic with you, but I feel lots of warmth from them. And I also find that the whacking process is one language, but underneath you is a more mysterious language of bringing these forms to life, and I really connect to that. And then we can see that in the little magic room in here, all the different ways Malcolm can create spirit in an inanimate object and bring them alive. And I think this connects us to a longer tradition of humans turning rock into a powerful object, and I really resonate with that.
The larger one, I had two of them, and I was never going to get time to teach myself to do it. So I had a Japanese woman, Yoko Kawada, do it. And when I saw what she'd done to these two pieces, I thought, there is no way I'm ever going to reach that level of expertise. You know, this is somebody who's an absolute master, and her the way she's repaired it and the sympathy with the shape and everything is just, I think it's amazing. So it's a great collaboration to take something that was destined for the garbage bin to create a beautiful piece.
Yeah, and a big message when I spoke to Malcolm on the phone, when we separated from talking about the work, Malcolm was really beaming out this belief that in this time in community, about the importance of community, but in particular of collaboration, and the importance of artists collaborating to try and create unified positiveness to then beam out into the world with what a lot of us are experiencing with levels of upset or agitation. And I feel that, it would be really remiss for me not to say that Malcolm's workshops have influenced and moved people's life force by Malcolm's generosity in these workshops and encouraging people to dive into their love of clay. And with your generous sharing of methodology, I think that you are just a great example of someone that's just giving out constantly support in the form of technique, but also energy to go for it, and how rewarding the creative process is back to your life, right? And to community.
Yes, yeah. And I think there's a big lesson I got from Makoto, and also from Peter Rushforth, the ceramicist. He will know Peter Rushforth was like a grandfather of Australian ceramics, and his generosity, his sharing is just incredible. And I've reached a stage in my career where I feel I have an obligation to pass everything on. And I think by there's no reason we shouldn't share and help each other. It just removes all the boundaries, and we become a much tighter knit community.
Yeah.
And you get a warm feeling.
Yeah.
I better not say.
Yeah.
No, don't go there.
Yeah. What kind of warm feeling?
No, I'm not allowed to. No.
Well, is that a warm feeling as in the feeling you have when you drink sake? A lot of it?
Piss in your wetsuit.
Right. That warm feeling. Welcome.
What? Right, Doug?
Do we have any questions technically while we have Malcolm here? Anyone want to ask that they've seen any process? Obviously, we haven't gone into glazes. I don't know a lot about glazes, so I'm blown away by all.
Neither do I.
Oh. Come on. Do you want to share some thoughts about your glazing process? Or do you want to explain what kiln you've got going in the backyard, like what you've built? What's
your firing process?
Yeah.
Most of the work's fired in a gas kiln. I do have a tiny electric kiln that's only for bisque firing, usually. And there's 3 pieces over there that are fired in a wood-fired kiln that I fired with Peter Rushforth about 10 years ago. Those pieces go into the kiln completely unglazed, so all the finish you see on them is just from the flame path and the ash from the fire landing on the pot and melting. In terms of glazing, I'm always trying to create a bit of variation in the surface. I mean, what can I say more about that? That's it, just variation.
How do you get the kiln god to stop those snowflake drips just at the bottom?
Right.
Years of experience.
What about,
So the thing about, sorry, I'll just hold that just a second. The thing about glazing is, we all tend to think there's a lot of effort goes into developing a glaze, the chemistry of it and everything. But I think there is as much, if not more effort going into learning how to use a glaze. How thick it's got to be, where you stop it, how hot it is in the kiln, as much as the chemistry, I think.
true. There's a piece in there where it looks like the kiln gods just kissed it on the side. It's a white glaze. Was that purposeful, or was that...
Absolutely.
Or as Trisha Dean was saying, hacking accidents.
No, I have no idea where that flash came from. And it was whatever it was next to flashed onto that.
Wonderful. It's gorgeous, yeah. Beautiful effect, yeah.
You pointed to this glaze and you said you wished something else had happened. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you told me?
Oh, the copper red, in terms of variation, I would have liked the red to burn out a little bit more, to have a bit more variation in it.
Is
Right.
that like the little one over there that
There's
looks
one
like there's more
the more is burnt out, I think, yeah. But
beautiful, so much light coming out.
I mean, it's still, you can see on one side it's burnt out a little bit, but that variation is something that fascinates me. I like trying to get that, using ash glazes and things like these heads over here. There's some variation created by using just spraying on some ash. Yeah.
Wow.
Can I ask a question? Malcolm, I know when you wedge clay for long enough, I see patterns and things like many of us do, but it's like you see the shape of a face come up when you're wedging. It's like a little repeated face, but it's always a different shape. It's random. Do you ever have that experience?
No.
Oh, come on.
No, because
How often do you
It's
wedge?
You know that wedge. When you wedge, you see a ram's head.
no, I don't use that technique, so I don't. So
Because it
the better.
reminds me of the randomness of the
Yeah.
expression on the face. Like it's,
No, I use a Japanese technique, spiral, Asian, Chinese and Korean, with spiral wedging.
yes,
So it's
a different shape.
it
Shell.
actually
Yeah.
it creates a sort of more creates a block of clay that's much more suitable for working with, because all the stresses are aligned better.
Okay. So I need to change my wedging practice?
Yes.
Okay.
You need to come to one of my workshops.
Yeah. When is your next workshop?
I don't know.
Any hands up? Anyone interested? Wow. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Have you thought about going to use the kilns in South Korea or China where you could actually create some much larger variations?
Who's going to buy them? No, I haven't really considered that.
But you
No.
brought up a big point, because you said who's going to buy them, and this is one of the tug of wars is wanting to follow your imagination, and the other side is the practical existence, right? Affording life. Is there anything you want to share in that space in terms of that tug of war between what you can visualize, and then the practicalities of being a dad,
I think I have I used to make some quite large pieces, but I couldn't sell them. You know, and I think, so I've sort of cut back in size to the sizes that we see here, one piece of clay, and it's relatively simple process, and the size becomes more saleable.
But maybe, I don't know, I think having this show as a sort of, is a starting point of showing much more within the art world. And maybe that's going to be able to be scaled up.
Awesome.
Because I
Yeah,
imagine
it'd be fun to make something
just
much bigger.
to do a couple that were, or even one. That
You
is
find a commission and you'll follow through.
Yeah.
I think Michelle wants me to make a bigger one for later in the year, don't you?
Wow, cool. Wow. And you had a question?
Oh, can I assume that once you've whacked it and you don't like it, you can't unwhack it? No, that's it.
And sometimes it goes right through. So then I just fill it up with clay and it's Bob's your uncle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bog it up.
Yeah. Oh.
Malcolm, you've had a really long and successful commercial career making absolutely stunning pieces like we've heard about, but if you knew somehow magically nothing was ever going to sell ever again, that was it, what would you make? What would you spend your day in the studio making, assuming you'd still want to make?
Great question.
Oh, so when I retire,
What would
I'm enjoying the. Well, it's interesting. It's such a great question. I mean, I love to make things that people use. So I'll always be
so
making bowls.
functionality is important in a way to you?
Yes. There's some, apart from, I've really enjoyed making these heads. That was especially these three here and the white ones there. The shape has changed a little bit. And then I've been making a few sort of very large vase or vessel shapes that are very open, sort of, and they're altered a little bit, and I quite enjoy making them. So I'd probably just make a few of them and.
Go, Sue.
keep teaching.
Sorry.
I think you keep teaching.
Yeah, I keep doing workshops, because it is, as I said, it's the generosity and sharing is something that we all need to do much more of, I think. Sometimes within the ceramics community there isn't quite as much of that as there should be.
And Malcolm, talk about the relationship between the functional and the exhibition work that I've heard you talk about a lot.
Yeah, so they feed off each other. What comes first? So, as an example, the blossom vases that are over in the window over there with the hakame, the slip decoration, the one that you like, Sam, the black clay ones. So I made a series of plates for Gilda's, a restaurant in Surrey Hills, and and it's a traditional Japanese technique of hakame, putting a slip on a plate or whatever, and then using a straw brush to brush through it. So I made these plates for Gilda's, but then I thought, it can fit really well on the blossom vase made of the black clay, because you're relying on actually breaking through the white slip to see the background. What else have I done?
Well, it's the vice versa too.
Yeah. Well, the orange coloured heads over here, that's a Shino slip. So that started with, I started using that more with exhibition work, and then some restaurants wanted that finish on plates, very dry finish. What else? I'm not sure.
You're doing well.
Yeah, I imagine a few of your places you're using on your functional wear and vice versa, or you've taken a bit of that?
Oh, the copper reds, the celadon one in there. There's also that chino, that white chino that's crawling a lot.
Yeah.
That's
What is
designed
crawling?
pulling apart.
Just for those who don't crawl.
No, they.
Cracked looking.
No, it's not cracked.
It's
It's crawling. Not.
There's two different things.
There's two different things. There's the grazing and there's the crawling. So where it's sort of pulling apart. So that's globby, yeah. That's it.
Globby, good.
So that glaze mainly started out on things that were sort of exhibition, more sculptural sorts of things, and then some of the restaurants actually like it, like Key Restaurant. So it's gone into that. What else?
Malcolm, what's the legacy you hope to leave with your work?
Oh,
Wow.
That's a good question.
shit.
Too early for that. You got too much work ahead of you.
If your grandchildren were going to find out about you or your great-grandchildren 30 years from now,
Dig up the backyard and find some.
So it'd be an archaeology site,
Well, that's the thing about ceramics, is it's never going to disappear, especially because I fire to such a high temperature. It doesn't break down.
Generosity would be the same word that would be used that he was using in Leonardo.
I would like to think of the generosity.
Yeah,
In
wow.
our community, it's very much the term we would use.
Wow. Awesome. Can I ask a question about some of us creatives have quite heavy critiques in our mind as we're making things. We can be tough on ourselves. Is this something that you've worked with, or you don't have at all, or something you can share with the internal voices while you're making what happens to you?
Oh yeah, I'm always struggling with that. It's the glaze is not quite right. It's not thick enough. It's stopped in the wrong place, and there's I suppose rarely am I completely happy with something. And particularly with the wood-fired work, I usually have to unload the kiln and leave it for about 6 months and then go back and appreciate it.
Wow.
I think, this is actually good. I was going to throw this out.
Wow. What's going on in that? Like, why are you doing that? That's pretty unusual
Well, it's
to
just like
not.
you have an expectation of the way you want something to come out. Like I would have liked the copper red to burn out a little bit more.
Right.
It's not quite good enough.
So
in my mind.
Yeah.
But people don't see that when they look
No,
at
I'm
it.
not-
They look at it and go, I really wish you'd burned that a little bit more. No, they look at it and it's a
But
stunning
you didn't hear me
piece.
say that. You
Right.
didn't hear,
Right.
right? You didn't hear me say that.
And you wouldn't have put it back for a second firing?
No, it's too much
wouldn't
farting
touch it?
around. But, no, I wouldn't put it back to a second firing because I think it's pretty.
Strive to have the full red.
Right.
I'll just make another one.
Yeah.
And that's what attracted me to that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was the
Hadn't burnt out.
glaze all around.
Right, yeah.
And that's, so many people that are using copper red would love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So actually, Michelle and Louise were telling me somebody came in earlier today. Was it earlier or early in the week? Last week that bought one of the blossom vases, and they were relating the story that they bought a copper red vase that I had on an exhibition 20 years ago.
Wow.
Oh, is that you?
Awesome.
Thank you. Well done. I still think about that vase. I think, oh my God, I shouldn't have sold it.
Wow. That's dedication to Malcolm's practice. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And we've stayed in a few daily lodges, so we did the same thing.
Yeah.
Turn the plates over.
Yeah.
Oh, well done.
Yeah.
Wondered about where that vase was.
Just round the corner.
It's just up there. Yeah.
Have you? Is this in Capella on Lord Howe? Have you been
We
seen?
went to Kangaroo Island.
Oh, lucky you. Okay. Because in Capella and Lord Howe are your other pieces in the library room, which look amazing.
Yeah, I did a whole
Yeah.
installation.
Yeah. Wow.
Jenny.
I've got a question, Malcolm. I know how hard you work, and I was wondering.
I'm always swanning off swimming with Doug.
I know, but then you race home to work. So how many other full-time working ceramicists would make a living in Australia out of their work?
Oh, I have no idea.
There can't be many.
Well, the census is really sad to read.
Yes.
When you see the data on the census, yeah, it's tough.
Yes,
And-
it's really,
And
any work as an artisan with your hands, I mean, notoriously is a difficult way to make a living.
Yeah, I think in order to make a living, I make tableware.
Yeah, it's harder on a plinth than on the wall.
And, and that it's a good question. Like making the tableware, it's providing a living, but it's also my practice time, the skill development that I think is really critical to a practicing artist. If you're making thousands of bowls, you develop the skill so that when you come to execute the exhibition work, then you have the skills to actually do it. So, I think in Australia it's been looked down upon a bit, potters making functional ware, and not really appreciated, and certainly not appreciated from the standpoint of skill development. So when I do my workshops, the people that come are only allowed to make 2 shapes. And, one is a little beaker and the other one's a little bowl. And, I should go backpedal a bit. So one of the first workshops I did, I let people make whatever they want. Big mistake. Now I say, well, you've got to make a dozen cups all the same size.
That's hard.
And that's like, not many people get to that stage. But that's about learning the skills that I'm teaching rather than just making a bunch of cups.
Well, and the tools that you teach us how to make also is a big part of you and what you've given to the community.
Wow.
I mean, a potter...
Well, what I've inherited from Makoto and he from his master.
Yeah, but you've shared it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you can,
Why not?
You can.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. But there's many that don't.
Yeah.
You're a custodian of that knowledge. You're not the owner of that knowledge.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And that,
Well said.
I mean, one of the things that I found when one of the early trips to Japan was going to a museum in Arita and seeing an image of a studio, somebody's workshop on the wall, and saying, oh, there's all my tools, it's like really old image. And it's like, wow, that's where it all comes from.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Wow.
I just wanted to say, you were talking about Malcolm having a really mucky workshop.
Oh, I did. You didn't agree.
Yes, well, it's actually in perfect order. It is because the quantity that he makes and the way he stows everything,
Yes.
it has to be in perfect order to work in that size space and to show
Produce what he
everything
does.
in different stages. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Leanne emptied the shavings now in the region.
Yeah, but they're built back up. They only get emptied out when the wheel doesn't turn anymore.
Exactly.
Well,
Somebody.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that some of what I'm hearing you say about the art and the more practical culinary pieces, there's a democracy to that, because I get every day of my life to have the joy of eating and drinking
Oh, wow.
of your pieces. So.
Oh, that's the greatest compliment
Oh, wow.
somebody can pay to me is.
how many people have that experience with Malcolm's? Oh my God. Wow. How cool is that?
That's pretty.
Well, I put my head up too. Wow. I mean, you feeling the love, man?
Blown away.
That's pretty. I mean, we should have this for you every birthday. We should just do this. To be lonely as an artist and then to have a room full of supporters is the most amazing feeling, because a lot of us work alone, and public don't always realise how much solitude there is in the practice, or we're with an assistant, helping us, or our loved ones. But this is a beautiful moment. Like I'm getting vibed off it. Any last questions before we all kind of dance or something? Like,
Sorry, I just have a bit of a weird question maybe, but do you consider yourself an artist or like a maker, a potter? How do you see yourself?
It's a tough question. I'm
just Malcolm.
just a potter.
No.
I would call it's a big debate, but I would call myself a potter. But yeah, I don't know how.
Yeah, but okay. So where in being an artist, what's going on there, that you're not saying that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I make functional work that's like art in everyday life, but I don't know. It
comes across as art, being an artist as accessible to every human being to be able to manifest and create, versus a certain group of people that can claim that space. It's for humanity, right? It brought a practice that we can put terms on, but the practice and making, stopping the world and making for oneself an object to then pass to someone else. Is that possible?
I'm not sure what quite.
Say yes.
Well, today you're an artist, for sure.
Today.
This is your artwork. You're a ceramicist all day, every day, but this is definitely artwork.
Yeah. You feel that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
You feel that?
It's a turning point. Thanks, Michelle.
Wonderful. Well, I'm honoured to share this moment with you, and I'll work on my definition of an artist.
We can have a big chat.
A bit of chat and a sake. But
talking about that.
I see you as an artist from our time together, and I'm really excited about being with you as you keep growing and exploring, and the scale and all these things to come. So
Next big installation.
this is
in a gallery.
Yeah.
New South Wales.
There you go.
Oh,
Yeah. But
we can dream, can't we?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So thank you everyone for coming to the talk. Thank you.
I've got a little something for you.